Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so glad that you did. This program is for the family caregiver caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia. It's a tough road, and we know that, and we're here for you. This is the show where we ask the questions and you get the answers. And we have lots of different experts in the field, from elder law attorneys to social workers to geriatric care managers, actually even real caregivers that you can identify with. So I'm glad that you joined us today. It is Tuesday, March the 8th, 2016, and we are live from Boca Raton, Florida. We have another great show for you today, very informative. We're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease and, of course, caregiving. But before we get started, I want to do a few announcements to remind you about what's coming up very soon on the horizon. We want to make sure that everyone knows about the Alzheimer's Community Care Annual Educational Conference. It's going to be this month on March 17th and 18th at the West Palm Beach Convention Center. This is an opportunity for caregivers and professionals alike to gather together for a day and a half and learn about all things Alzheimer's. Topics include best communication techniques, the laws of guardianship, the latest in research, and much, much more. If you're interested, and I would strongly urge you to get interested, go to the website alzcare.org. That's alzcare.org. You can find all the details there. You can register. Time is getting short, so you want to make sure that you get your reservation, get your ticket. It's very affordable for family caregivers. Also, last week on our show, we had Denise Jordan. She's the executive director of the American Parkinson Disease Association South Florida chapter. And Denise was sharing with us all about Parkinson's disease. We talked about dementia related to Parkinson's disease, and we were so engrossed about comparing Alzheimer's to Parkinson and giving all kinds of great information and tips to caregivers that we neglected to talk about the walk that's coming up in April. So I wanted to share with you all about the Optimism Walk. This is the American Parkinson Optimism Walk. It's coming to Florida on April 17th, in just a month, at the Town Center of Boca Raton, Glades Road in Boca. And registration begins at 8 o'clock. They have warm-up, opening ceremonies at 9, and the walk begins at 9:30. A few things about Parkinson's disease, just to give a recap from last week. Every 9 minutes, there is a new diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. 60,000 Americans are diagnosed every year. Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder that is chronic and slowly progressive over time, much like how Alzheimer's disease is chronic and progressive over time. Motor symptoms include slowness of movement, muscle rigidity, tremors, and difficulty with gait and balance. And the American Parkinson's Disease Association, they do walks in their different chapters. Like for Alzheimer's, we want to make people aware and educate people and raise funds so that one day we might have a cure. And that would be our goal and our hope for both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. If you'd like to register for the walk coming up on April 17th, you can go to their website, which is apda Florida, spelled out, .org. So it's apdaflorida.org. And you can register online for the walk on April 17th and go and support this wonderful cause. And I hope that you do. So that's the details for you there. If you have a question or you've heard or seen something on Caregiver Solutions Info and you'd like to ask a question or maybe you have a comment, you can send me an email and we'll answer it on the following week's show. So my email address is marcia.teele@arden-courts.com. And you can just email something to me. You might have a particular question about something that you saw, or maybe you would just like to ask a question and have it answered of something that we haven't even talked about yet. So just send that to us. We'll be sure to get that answer for you. Today we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease and the effect that it has not only on the person with the disease, but the caregiver. And it's very important when you're talking about Alzheimer's disease to not talk about just the disease and not talk about how it affects the person who has it, but how it affects the family, how it affects the primary caregiver and the family, because we always say that Alzheimer's is a family disease. And we're also going to be talking to an expert giving us great information, some medical information, but also we're going to be giving caregivers tips, especially on what to say, what not to say when you go to visit someone that has Alzheimer's, to make everybody more comfortable and make it a more pleasant experience for everybody. So when we come back from this quick commercial, we'll get right into our show, so stay right with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and we're back, and we're going to be talking about all things Alzheimer's disease and caregiving on today's show. So it's going to be very informative, and you want to listen up and take notes if you want to, because we're going to be talking about do's and don'ts and lots of caregiving issues and some medical information. So it's going to be great. And here to share her expertise with us today is Roxanne Levitsky. Roxanne is a nurse and the resident services coordinator at Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Delray Beach. Welcome, Roxanne.
Thank you, Marcia.
I'm so glad you're here because, first of all, you know, talking about Alzheimer's and having hands-on with Alzheimer's is one of my very, very favorite things to do because it's my passion. And I know, like you have the passion also. I understand that you have 25 years dealing with geriatric population, Alzheimer's, caregivers. That's a long time.
It is, but I started very young in nursing. I started out in Pennsylvania and worked a year in a hospital, and the rest of my nursing experience has all been geriatrics, primarily Alzheimer's, dementia, and I love working with this population.
And you have to have a special heart when you work with people with Alzheimer's and dementia because it is a special population and it takes a lot of training, not only training, but patience and empathy and sympathy, and the list goes on and on. So I am so glad that you chose this profession of nursing because you are one of the special few with the heart, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Marcia.
I wanted to ask you, your title at Arden Courts is Resident Services Coordinator. What does that exactly mean?
That means taking care of the residents, coordinating any services they need, be it doctor's appointments, specialized doctor's appointments, such as psychiatry, psychology, podiatry, anything, staffing, the facility, staffing our wings, and also taking care of the families, answering their questions, because Alzheimer's is a family disease, and the families are just as important as the resident, and that's a huge part of my day is dealing with families, and I love it.
Well, that's great because you're right. It takes a village. I know there's a neurologist down south in Broward County. He told one of my family members, he said, it takes 3 people to take care of one person with Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if you're a single family caregiver, you can't do it. You can't do it alone. It does take a village of people and experts in their field. And so being a resident services coordinator, you mentioned you coordinate the care and you're in charge of making sure that a resident gets everything that they need and that the family member gets everything that they need. And that's a pretty big job. So if you're coordinating and with all the different specialties, I think it's real important for people. We should talk about, why people need to come to a community, a memory care community, sooner than later, because there are so many advantages of coming into a community where someone like you can coordinate all the things that they need, and it's really different than having someone being at home where there's just one caregiver or maybe someone coming into the home. Can you tell me, let's talk about the benefits of how much more benefit and value it is to a resident when they come into a community like Arden Courts as opposed to staying home?
One of the benefits and values is the socialization they're going to get with other residents, with the staff. And another benefit is the amount of eyes that are going to be on that resident, the amount of different levels of care they're going to get. You're going to have your nurses, which are going to be looking clinically. You're going to be having your caregivers, which are going to be looking at it from a different perspective. So you actually get to see the whole resident, the whole person, from the condition of their skin to if they seem a little blue, what you can do, socialize them, have activities involved to get them to do things they enjoy doing. The goal and what a facility offers is to the quality of life.
Right.
I think it ups the quality of life for this person rather than being at home in some cases with a very stressed out caregiver, because this is not easy for all of us to do, let alone one person. And it just not only improves the quality of life for the resident when a person is placed correctly, it also improves the life of the family.
Right, and it takes that burden of stress off of that primary caregiver because, they're suffering right along with their loved one.
Yes.
And this disease, will bring the whole family down. And unfortunately, it's just the truth. And having that support system for the caregiver and for the resident benefits everybody to make quality of life number one. I mean, without quality of life, what difference does it make? And I think that sometimes people think, well, he has Alzheimer's. Well, do you know, just because someone has Alzheimer's, vascular dementia,
Right.
Lewy bodies dementia, Parkinsonian type dementia, there's still quality of life to be had. I mean, it's not over. It's not over until it's over. And we want to provide all of these opportunities because with the support system in a community like Arden Courts, the person can have better quality of life. And it actually has proven that with everything that you talked about, that they sometimes actually improve, in the short run. And obviously Alzheimer's disease is fatal, and no one's ever been cured of it because there is no cure. But their quality of life, because of that, they've actually been rallied and bloomed and blossomed and found purpose and found happiness and enjoyment in the moment.
Well, that's why everyone's treated as an individual, and that's why an intake and something that we do and that I do as a resident services coordinator is look at the whole person, what they did before they retired, meet as a team, see what we can do from every perspective, not just medical, but social, etc., to give them something that will make them feel like they have a purpose and give whatever time that they have left, and sometimes it's many years, happiness.
Yes, and that's what it's all about. You can create more memories for the person, not with the disease, but memories for the family so
Yes.
that they can still enjoy that loved one as they travel through the journey. And it is very important because we want to provide the best that we can for as long as we can. And until there's a cure for Alzheimer's, this is what it's about. It's about providing the best that you can. You mentioned about finding out about the person, and I love that we do that. I love that we want to know who they were in life before they actually were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, because you can tell a lot about the person from the career that they had, and you want to focus on that person life as they used to be, because at Arden Courts, we focus on what they can do and not on what they can't do. And so because of that, we want to find out, was this person a lawyer, a doctor, a stay-at-home mom? What's important to them? And we want to find out what their day was like on a day-to-day basis, because then we can use that information to create an environment where they're going to feel comfortable when they come into a community, because it's going to feel familiar to them.
Right, like librarians, we have our books. We have homemakers, women that have been homemakers their entire lives. They love to help out in the kitchen. They love to wipe down the tables. They love to do things that were their normal routine back in the day when they were raising their families, and they get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. You can see it in their faces, and you can tell. I didn't know we had a resident that was a librarian for many years until I saw her with the books, and it's different things like that. That's why getting a good resident biography is a good first step to making that experience very fulfilling.
You're right. And, you share that information with the staff, and that's a way for them to engage that person and maybe talk about their prior life and what they used to do. Even sorting laundry, folding towels can be a very good task for someone with dementia, because it's like you said, something maybe they did their whole life for their family, and they have a purpose now. They feel productive, and that's what it's about. It's making that person, it's elevating their self-esteem and giving them a purpose and a reason and making them feel good that they were helpful and they enjoyed doing it and they made somebody happy by being helpful. And I love the look on their faces when they complete that task, and everyone is so appreciative, and it makes them just glow. I love that.
I know. As I told you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that a lot of times the women will actually look for the basket of laundry to fold because that's their job, is how they feel is their job. And you're right. They do get a great deal of satisfaction of sitting in front of the television and folding towels because it's what they did back then.
Right. We had many years ago, I've been at Arden Courts, and this is my 16th year starting. I'm very proud to say that. And we used to have a resident who was living with us who was a physician. And he was living in the past because, with Alzheimer's disease, the short-term memory is the first to go. The long-term memory stays longest, and it's the last to go. And so he was living in the past, and he was a retired physician, and he liked to look at charts because that was something he did his whole life. So the family brought in a little desk, and every day the staff would bring some manila folders and some papers and say, "Here, doctor, here's your caseload for today. Here are your charts." And you know that even though it really didn't make sense to him, he thought it did, and he was happy because he knew that he was going to work again, and he was helping somebody, and he needed to do that. That was his life. That was his passion. And so, we wanted to keep that routine going for him because he was living in the past. And that's what Alzheimer's patients do. They live in the past, and we want to provide opportunities for them. So one of the things that I know that you do is that you also supervise the other nurses. And when we were talking about nurses, I think it's very important to talk about the differences between what a nurse can do and maybe something called a med tech. Now, Arden Courts here in Florida, we do not use med techs. We use only licensed nurses. But med techs, from my understanding, is an aide, maybe a home health aide or a certified caregiver aide that takes a crash course in 4-hour crash course on medication management. And that's not always the best. And things can go wrong, and it's supposed to be supervised by a nurse. But I think it's important to, when you're choosing an assisted living for your loved one, to make sure that the nurses are the ones that administer and manage those medications. Don't you agree?
I do agree, and for a number of reasons. And there are some very good med techs, I'm sure, but only a nurse can assess. Only a nurse can know if somebody is having a reaction. Suppose somebody just started a new antibiotic, for example. A med tech would give the pill, and then if that person was having a reaction, hives, etc., the med tech wouldn't be able to do anything. A nurse would. The nurse would be able to call the doctor, get a telephone order, because nurses can take telephone orders from doctors. So the nurse would be able to get the order and get on top of that right away. Having a nurse 24/7 is so important for triage situations. If someone has a fall, the nurse is there to assess that person, see if there's any injuries, see if that person has to leave the facility to go perhaps to the emergency room, or if that can be managed in the facility. What I found in my career is when nurses, 24-hour nurses, hospitalizations go way down.
And it's so scary for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia to go to the emergency room.
Yes.
It's very scary for them. It confuses them. It's traumatic for them. And if we can prevent that from happening by having a nurse assess the situation, and maybe you might even call in a mobile service to take an x-ray instead of shipping them out, 911 to the emergency room, which is just going to make things worse in the end.
As you know, anybody with Alzheimer's, change is not easy, and new situations are not easy, and extra stimulation is not easy. What could be more hyper-stimulating than an emergency room?
I mean, for a regular
lights?
person, it's overstimulating, it's scary, and can you imagine just that much more, like you say, with someone who is very confused and doesn't understand what's happening to them. So I like the fact that, we do have nurses in our building, on site, 24/7, to do those triage, to take the regular blood pressure checks and the weight checks, and to have those eyes. And you mentioned earlier about the difference when someone's at home with a caregiver, but let's say they hire a home health aide in the home, and that's usually the first step, and that's fine. And I always say that's a first step, and it's fine to do that until it's not anymore. And one of the things that worries me is that when there's an aide, a private duty aide at home, and there's no other eyes on that person, who is overseeing what is going on, the interaction between the patient and the private duty person. And I'm sure, like you said, there's plenty of great ones out there, but we hear so many awful stories in the news about how caregivers, whether they're certified or not, they're in the home taking care of some elderly people with dementia, and they actually abuse them, take advantage of them. And we hear about that all the time.
Well, one of the things at a facility in Arden Courts, I'm using as an example because I work there, they have level 2 background checks done on all of the caregivers. What happens in the home is sometime your neighbor will say, well, I knew somebody that used to take care of somebody, and then you have a caregiver in the home that you don't know a lot about the background. And unless you're there, you don't know if that caregiver is interacting with your loved one or if that caregiver is simply on their telephone and puts the loved one in front of a television and as a babysitter. You don't want that. That's why the activities that we offer and the socialization and the gentle stimulation is what helps these folks thrive.
Absolutely right. And, sometimes people say, well, Mom always wanted to stay home, or I promised Dad I would never put him in a nursing home. And promises are only as good as the time that you made the promise, what was going on. Did you say, I'll never put you in a nursing home if you have Alzheimer's disease? No, you probably didn't expect that your loved one was going to get Alzheimer's disease. And so we have to look at what's the best for the person, and not that we're doing something to them by placing them in a community that's supportive for them. The caregivers have to understand it's not that you're doing something to them, but you're doing something for them. And I think if you change the mindset and change that one little word, it's going to make a huge difference in how people think about the future and what is the best thing for somebody. So we're going to be talking more about that, because we're going to be getting into caregiver guilt, what caregivers feel, what they think. We have lots of experience between the two of us with talking to caregivers on a daily basis, and we're going to share that with you. Maybe you can relate to it, or somebody that is a caregiver and you've heard these things from them. So we're going to talk about that as soon as we come back from a short commercial break. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare-covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors of this show, Elder Law Department and First Choice, and especially Arden Courts. Arden Courts is a national sponsor. They have communities located all throughout the United States, And Arden Court specializes in memory care. So it's a memory care community. It's an assisted living, but it's a specialized assisted living, 100% dedicated to dementia and helping not only the resident, but the caregiver. One way that Arden Courts would like to help the family caregiver is by offering to you this free 36-hour day book. This is considered the go-to book in the realm of caregiving. It's already in its 5th edition. And that being said, it's been around a long time and people are every day using this book to learn about caregiving and caregiving techniques. It's so helpful, and you want to make sure that if you're a family caregiver or you're an adult child and your parent maybe has dementia and your mother, your father is taking care of your their spouse, it's important for you too to understand what they're going through, and so that you can help relate to them and give that support. So if you'd like to have this free book in your library, all you have to do is call the Arden Courts toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410. Tell them you heard about this free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info program, and they'll get your name and your address, and they'll be happy to send you out a free caregiving book that you can enjoy and share with others. So, that being said, we are with Roxanne Levitsky from Arden Courts of Delray Beach, and she is the resident services coordinator, which means she's the nurse in charge. We don't call it a director of nursing because that's more of a nursing home terminology, but in essence, that's what she does. And she oversees the complete care of the residents and involves the families. So we're talking now with Roxanne, and we touched a little bit about placing someone in a memory care community. And it's really hard for caregivers to know when to do that. And we talked about the benefits of having someone go into an assisted living for memory care because of what you mentioned, the stimulation, the socialization opportunities, the medical care that they can get. If you had to pay separately in your home for someone to come in, a nurse 24/7 available to you, have an activity person there 7 days a week, all day long to engage in activities. Also having other services, having someone to prepare all your meals, and you have a chef and have someone there as a caregiver in addition to that to help with bathing, dressing, toileting, eating, all the things that you get that a resident benefits from in a memory care community like Arden Courts. Do you know that most people could never afford that?
Absolutely.
Because it's so encompassing. And so, families have to kind of look at what they're paying for care at home, what the benefits of that care is, if they're getting enough of everything, and then looking at the difference in cost. And I understand cost can be a factor, but by the time you have someone coming into the home for 12 or 18 or 24 hours a day, you'd be surprised how much more value and more care and more everything you can get in a community for less money. And so we want to talk about not only, look at that option because it is a great option, but we want to talk about when to do that. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not going to place my husband until he doesn't know me anymore. And I hear that all the time from caregivers. But the thing of it is, they might forget your name. They might forget, that you're the actual wife. And they might think that you're their sister or their mother. But when it comes down to it, the person with Alzheimer's disease, they know you belong to them. They know that you're their person. It's something that you're connected. And because of the Alzheimer's, they forget your name. They forget some of the details, but they know that you're their person.
We had a resident whose daughter came in to visit, and he was very excited, but he said, my granddaughter is here. And she felt bad, but I tried to tell her exactly what you said, Marcia. He got the terminology wrong. Instead of saying daughter, he said granddaughter, but he knows you're somebody that he loves.
Yep.
And somebody that's very important in his life. So it's not as important that they call you by the right name. It's the look in their eyes and the look on their face and the calmness in many cases they get when they see the person they love very much.
That's right. And so, if that's the reason you're waiting because, they still know your name, I mean, you have to, again, weigh the pros and cons. A lot of families say, well, when, he becomes incontinent, then that's when I'm going to do it because I don't want to clean up any messes, But again, there are ways that when you come into a community that you have more support and you don't have to be cleaning up the messes at home or worrying about things getting, destroyed. And it's so much more dignity, I think, for somebody coming into a community that they're surrounded by people that understand what they're going through. They understand Alzheimer's. They understand how to communicate with someone with Alzheimer's disease. They understand what the behaviors are going to be, and they're not judged. And I think that's really, really important.
It's very important because sometimes caregivers will say, he's giving me a hard time. No, he's not giving you a hard time. He's having a hard time himself. And I see myself, the frustration on my residents' faces when they can't think of that word or they can't capture what they want to say. That's when you need the loving kindness that our staff is trained in, specifically in Alzheimer's dementia care, knowing how to redirect, knowing how to calm that irrational, to us, fear, but very rational to the person with the disease.
Right. And, a caregiver at home, they are so stressed out and overwhelmed, and they lose their patience, and that's understandable that they lose their patience, but it's because of the stress and they don't have the support. And I think, I always this is my analogy. I love this analogy. You have a couple and they're married 50, 60 years and they have their life together and they've learned how to do the dance. And so they might literally dance, but I'm talking about figuratively, a dance. They know the routine. They know this one moves right, this one goes this way. They understand how the other are the actions and how to compensate for that. And so they have this life with their dance steps. And all of a sudden, one of them gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's, because of it affects the brain and it affects the thinking and the memory and executive functions and all kinds of things, the person loses the dance steps. They can't remember anymore what the step is, so they're making up new steps. Well, if you're the patient, you're making up the new steps, and you're the spouse, the well spouse who's trying to follow them, guess what? You're going to step on each other's toes.
That's an excellent analogy.
And it's not going to be fun because it's ouch, ouch, ouch. You're stepping on my toes. You're making me mad. Now I'm getting frustrated. I don't understand where you want me to go. I don't know if you want me to go left or right or back or forward. And it just gets snowballs. And, caregivers don't need to have that frustration because there is help out there. And I think that when you let go a little bit, and we're talking about guilt now because caregivers, understandably, you feel guilty. It's not your fault that your loved one got Alzheimer's disease. It's not your fault that you don't understand them. It's not your fault that you don't know how to predict what they're going to do because you haven't been trained in this. I mean, this is not something that you planned for. But when you come into a community and the community is there with the support, with the staff who's been trained, that understands all of these things and understands the new dance steps. We understand. We know the dance steps, all right? And there's plenty of songs that we dance to, figuratively and literally, but we know the dance steps. And I think that if a caregiver would let go a little bit, true, we're not going to do the care exactly like the caregiver did at home. It's not going to be exactly. It might not be exactly the same way. It might not be exactly the same time, but it will get done.
That is correct.
And so this is something that's important because this guilt that caregivers are feeling, I know you deal with it every day. You have caregivers that come into your office and, and they're just feeling upset. And how do you comfort them?
First of all, by letting them know what a privilege it is for us to take care of their loved one. And I mean that very sincerely. Second of all, to let them know that I'm there for them as much as for their loved one. To realize they're not alone in this, that we're there to support them. We also offer them support groups for inside the facility and support groups outside the facility. We encourage them to take this decision to place their person there as a good decision, and that we're going to do our very best. And usually it takes about 30 to 60 days
For them to transition.
for them to transition and trust us, because they're trusting us with their most precious person. And we have to earn that trust and show them that we're worthy of that trust. And I also let them know that I have an open door policy, that they can come in anytime and speak to me. And I am there for the caregiver to listen. That's the best thing I can do 90% of the time, is just listen.
And make them feel heard, because caregivers sometimes feel that they're not heard. And actual times, I've seen so many residents actually in your office too. They come to visit you, and you're so kind, because they need to be heard too.
That's probably the best part of my day, is when I have my residents come in. My door is always open for that very reason, unless I'm having a meeting with the family, because I want to be that person, even though they don't know my name in many situations, but they know I'm a place they could come if they're frustrated or they have a problem. And I honestly consider it a privilege. This is a job that's so much more than a job to me. It's a calling. Many people say nursing is a calling, and I agree. But I think this type of nursing is also very special.
You know, Roxanne, it's funny you say that, because ever since I was a little girl, I've always liked babies and older people. And I too feel that this was a calling for me, being there now in my 16th year. And I get so much satisfaction from being able to put a smile on a resident's face. And maybe it's just because I smile at them and they smile back, or because they see me and they put their outstretched arms because they know they're going to get a hug, and they're going to get a little, a squeeze and a back rub, and somebody to tell them that they look nice, and someone who really cares. And we give a lot of TLC there. And I think that's so important, because, it's just not a place to live. It's a place to call home. And when you're home, you want to feel safe. You want to feel comfortable. You want to have family and friends around you that care about you. And I think that is the greatest part of doing what we do in an environment like Arden Courts, because it is so caring and loving and understanding. And it just thrills me every day, and we have parties and we have dances. And I tell my girlfriends, I said, you know what? Yeah, I can go out and have fun and dance with you, but I truly get more satisfaction dancing with my residents when we have these family parties and entertainers that come in, and we get them up and we're dancing. And even if they're in the wheelchair, we can grab their hands and we can dance, and we make a difference. Every day we make a difference.
And that's a good part of it. You go into work and you feel like you've accomplished something when you go home, even if it's just getting a smile from that resident, even if it's just when a resident looks at me and they just get a calmness over them because they know this lady is going to be able to help me. That's what we strive for, that sense of peace, that sense of knowing that they're not afraid, they're not alone anymore, that they're home.
Right.
That's a perfect
and
way.
It takes, the first few days, the first week is very crucial for a new resident to get acclimated, just to the point where they do feel they're safe. People are nice to them. They get what they need. And then it's a day-to-day process. It is a process. It's not going to happen overnight, because it is a process where they're learning a new routine. They're getting to know people. They're actually giving little pieces of themselves to all the other employees and all the other residents and all the other people that come into the community, where before the primary caregiver wore a big target, like a bullseye on their chest, and everything got directed to that primary caregiver, the good, the bad, the ugly. So now when you have a village that's supporting that person, little pieces, they have a lot more people to give bonding to and trust to, and everybody has a purpose there, and takes a piece of whatever that resident needs and accomplishes the goal that's before them. And I think that it does take about 30 days for someone to get acclimated to a new routine. Some do it faster. I mean, a lot of women are more social and they're social butterflies and they take to it, very quickly. And sometimes men, because they're more macho, they might require another 30 days to really, get into the routine and feel like it is home.
You're right. You're right about that. But that's where we come in, and that's what we do. And I think one of the nicest things I see is some of our residents that are more mobile helping the residents that aren't. I'll see residents that are able to walk independently, pushing someone in a wheelchair, and they take a great deal of satisfaction in knowing they're helping.
And isn't that wonderful? I love how the higher functioning resident takes under their wing maybe a lower functioning, like you say, in a wheelchair or someone that's more confused, and it makes them feel good that they are helping, and it benefits both of them. And if you take away that opportunity, because some families say, well, my mom is not that bad. She's not like all these other people. You're actually taking an opportunity away from her so she could, engage with different people, whether they're higher or lower or the same, different personalities. It's all about opportunity where they can find their niche, even in Alzheimer's disease.
That is correct.
And I love that. I love how we do that, and I love how it happens. And I think, you and I, we see many miracles, every day, and it is very fulfilling, for us, but it's also fulfilling for families when they realize that there is hope, not to cure the disease. We're not there yet, but there is hope, knowing that there is a better life for their loved one and that they can enjoy their loved one's life better when they do get help. And I think that that's our message, today. So we're going to take our last commercial break. And when we come back, Roxanne and I, we're going to tell you about some do's and don'ts so that if you have a loved one and maybe they're already in a community or you're thinking about it, or maybe you're having visitors come to your home to visit your loved one, there's what we call visiting do's and don'ts. And we want to explore that a little bit with you to help you. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we're back, and I'm talking with Roxanne. Roxanne is the Resident Services Coordinator at Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Delray Beach. And we're talking about all things Alzheimer's and caregiving. And we want to share with you, if you have someone that has Alzheimer's, or you know someone that has Alzheimer's or any related dementia, and you want to go visit them, but you're kind of afraid because you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, whether you're going to visit them in their own home or whether you're going to visit them in a community setting, it's important to know what you're going to do when you get there. And so there's a lot of families that say, I just don't know, if I could handle that, or if a visitor, I just don't know what I would say, so I'm not going to go. But, we're going to help you with that. So let's talk about some do's and don'ts for visiting.
Okay.
I think it's very important because, I don't think people talk about this enough, and we really need to share and communicate our fears, because most fears can be, eliminated by education. So, for instance, the other day, I have a friend who knows one of the residents that lives at our community. And she had never visited the resident because she was afraid. She really didn't know what to expect, and she put it off until finally, it was kind of uncomfortable for her not to come anymore because the resident's wife they were friends. And so I said, why don't you come and I'll be there and I'll help you. So she came, and one of the first things that she did that, I don't fault her. People do it because they don't know. But the first thing is, do you remember who I am? All right.
I know.
And now, and you want to ask them, because especially if she hasn't seen them for a long time. But that is not the best way to start a visit, is by asking the person with dementia, do you remember who I am? Because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to remember who you were, especially depending on the relationship, how long you've known them, the experiences that you've had with them in the past. So instead of trying to get them to say your name, it's better to go ahead. You say
I say what I tell people is, don't say, do you remember who I am? Just say, hi, Bob. I'm Roxanne. How are you? I'm your friend, Roxanne. I'm your neighbor, Roxanne. I'm your niece, Roxanne. That gives them a point, and that doesn't put them on the spot and make them feel anxious, because that's how Alzheimer's residents react when they're put on the spot or they don't know the answer to a question. They get very anxious, and that's what we want to try to avoid.
Right, because they feel they're being tested.
Yes.
And who likes a pop quiz, And I mean, I certainly don't. And so I sort of intercede for her, and I said, Bob, we'll just use Bob as a generic name. And I said, Bob, this is your friend Roxanne, I'll use your name. This is your friend Roxanne. You used to go to the club with her, and you used to take her out on your boat, for instance. And so, like you said, it gives them a reference, knowing that, okay, I might not remember this person, but I know who they are, and I'm okay with that. So that's really important. We don't want to quiz, and we don't want to say, do you remember where we lived? Do you remember what we did? So instead of asking those questions, give the answers.
Correct.
We golfed together. We were golfing buddies in New York, and we won for the best game. And, and start reminiscing with those points of reference. I think that's probably the number one thing that I would share with people about what not to do. The other one, another good one is, don't be in a rush.
Yes.
You want to take your time. You want to have eye contact with them. Very important to have eye contact. And, there's someone came to visit a resident, and they had sunglasses, or they had the kind of glasses that were dark when it was inside and got darker when they were outside, like the lenses. And it was really hard for the resident to really kind of connect with that person because they couldn't see their eyes. And that's scary for a person with dementia. They can't see their eyes. They really, you need to have that eye contact. So if you're wearing sunglasses, take your sunglasses off.
Right.
Yeah, very important. Also, Don't talk down to them. Don't talk about them in front of them.
Number one pet peeve of mine from a nursing perspective with people with Alzheimer's and dementia, they're not children. They deserve the same respect you would give anyone else, and you're correct.
And you know, people that come to even visit me to take a tour, they may bring their loved one with them, and they talk about them as if they aren't even there. But the person is there, they're alive and in front of you, and they're not giving their respect. And I always include that person in our conversation. And yes, you may not say exactly what you might say if they were not there, but you have to include them because they're a person too, and it's respect for that person.
Dignity.
And dignity. Absolutely, absolutely.
If I could just share something quickly.
Sure.
I took one of our residents to a doctor's appointment, and one of the things that impressed me the most about this doctor was the fact that he spoke to the resident, not to me. He asked her the questions. And when she didn't quite know the answer, I said, "Would you mind if I say?" And the resident said yes. And it's just a dignity issue, and it's very important.
Right, right. And also, when you're visiting, sometimes it's important, depending on the person, not to spend too much time, especially in the beginning. You want to have shorter visits. You can do more frequent visits, shorter visits. Sometimes too long of a visit can be overstimulating.
It can be, and it tires them out, and it puts a little bit of stress
Right.
on them.
So what we want to do real quick before we run out of time, you want to come in, you want to be happy, you want to have a positive attitude.
Smile.
Smile will take you a long way. Reminisce about old days. Don't ask questions. Just give them the answers. You know, oh, we had so much fun when we did this, that, and the other. And make it a pleasant time together. And even if you don't talk, hold their hand, put your arm around them, listen to music together. It's very important to spend time. It doesn't have to be all talking and reminiscing. It can just be special bonding time. And it's very, very important to do that. And so these are some of the do's and don'ts. And if you'd like to know more, you can call us at Arden Courts. We have a toll-free number, 888-478-2410. They'll be happy to put you in touch with an Arden Courts near you. And so I thank you, Roxanne, for being with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
Well, you certainly know your stuff. And for all of you out there, we'll see you again next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug. They need it, and so do you. Take care. See you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed